Poland was the first country where the Nazi death machine tested the full power of its destructive ideology. But why did this country provoke such fierce rejection from the Führer? Why was the Polish people condemned not only to subjugation, but to partial extermination and transformation into a disenfranchised labor force? To understand this, we must delve into the depths of racial theory, geopolitics, and the personal complexes of the Third Reich's leader. The roots of Hitler's hatred for Poland date back to 1918. After Germany's defeat in World War I, the map of Europe was redrawn. Poland, which had not been independent for more than a century, reappeared on the map. However, for Germany, this was a national disgrace. Hitler, like many German nationalists of the time, could not come to terms with the loss of what he considered to be ancestral lands: Poznan, Upper Silesia, and most importantly, the creation of the Danzig Corridor. This strip of land cut East Prussia off from the rest of Germany to give the Poles access to the Baltic Sea. The free city of Danzig, Gdansk, populated mainly by Germans, became a symbol of vertical humiliation for Hitler. In his book Mein Kampf and in public speeches, he repeatedly called Poland a seasonal state, Saisonstaat, and an ugly offspring of the Treaty of Versailles. He believed that Poland's existence within such borders was an artificial construct of the Anglo-French victors, created solely to keep Germany in check. While territorial claims could be explained by politics, the cruelty of the occupation regime was explained by ideology. Hitler was obsessed with the idea of Lebensraum, living space in the East. According to his doctrine, the German nation, as the master race, needed land for colonization and food security. Poland was the first obstacle on the way to this paradise for Aryans. However, this raised the question: what to do with the millions of people already living on this land? Hitler's answer was laid out in the Nazi racial pyramid. Poles, being Slavs, were classified as Untermenschen, subhumans. Hitler and his chief ideologist, Alfred Rosenberg, believed that Slavs were incapable of governing their own state. In their opinion, the greatness of historical Poland in the past was the result of the infusion of German blood, or the activities of German minorities, and modern Poland was merely a contaminated territory. Hitler's hatred was based on biological determinism. He saw Poles as a biological threat to the purity of Aryan blood and as competitors for soil resources. Hitler understood that in order for a nation to cease to exist as a political force, it must be deprived of its brain. His hatred was expressed in specific orders to destroy the Polish intelligentsia. While in France and Denmark, the Nazis retained a semblance of local administration, in Poland, a general government regime was established under the leadership of Hans Frank. Hitler stated outright, Poland must be treated as a colony. Poles must become slaves of the great German world empire. To achieve this goal, Operation Tannenberg and Operation AB, an emergency pacification operation, were initiated. Hitler personally approved the executions of professors from Jagiellonian University, teachers, doctors, lawyers, and priests. His logic was simple. It is easier to impose a slave destiny on nations without an elite. Poles were allowed only a basic education so that they could read road signs and understand the orders of their German masters. Hitler's hatred was pragmatic. He hated the Poles for their will to resist and their culture, which he ordered to be destroyed. Another factor that fueled the Führer's hatred was the demographic situation. Before the war, Poland was home to the largest Jewish community in Europe, numbering around 3.3 million people. In Hitler's mind, Polish and Jewish often merged into a single image of the enemy. He considered Poland to be the main source of biological contamination in Europe. By occupying the country, he was able to implement the final solution: It was no coincidence that Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec were built on Polish soil. Hitler wanted to turn Poland into a giant cemetery, first cleansing it of Jews, and then, according to the General Plan East, reducing the Polish population by 85% through deportations to Siberia and physical extermination. Interestingly, until early 1939, Hitler considered the possibility of a temporary alliance with Poland against the USSR. He hoped that Warsaw would make concessions on Danzig and join the Anti-Comintern Pact. However, the Polish government responded with a firm refusal. For Hitler, this was a personal insult. The Führer's anger at the rebellious Poles who dared to say no to the greatest, in his eyes, genius of modern times grew into uncontrollable rage. From that moment on, Goebbels' propaganda began to portray the Poles as beasts in human form, accusing them of mythical atrocities against the German minority, for example, the staging of the Gleiwitz incident. Hitler used these fabricated pretexts to justify a total war of annihilation. The results of this hatred were catastrophic. Poland lost about 6 million citizens, half of whom were Polish Jews. Warsaw was literally wiped off the face of the earth on Hitler's personal orders after the 1944 uprising. The Führer wanted to leave no stone unturned in the city, so that the very name Poland would disappear from the memory of future generations. Hitler hated Poles for their geographical location, their Slavic origins, their faith — Catholicism was also perceived by the Nazis as a hostile force — and their refusal to submit. This hatred was not a fleeting emotion. It was a carefully calculated plan to dismantle an entire nation for the sake of the mythical greatness of the Third Reich. Today, looking back on the beginning of World War II, we see that Poland was not just the first victim of aggression, but the main battleground between humanity and the most radical form of xenophobia in human history. If you found this episode useful and would like to see more historical analyses like this, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us release new videos more often. Now here's a question for you. Do you think Poland had a real chance to avoid this fate through diplomacy in 1939? Or was a clash with Hitler absolutely inevitable due to his fanatical ideas? Write your opinion in the comments. I will definitely read them and try to respond to the most interesting thoughts. Let's discuss history together.